Wow, Miranda. You just keep going from strength to strength in your orchestration, and it really shows in this latest entry. It's very powerful. It's got so many great ideas, and those things that need fixing would be very easy to fix. So great job. Really, really enjoyable score to look at. Now, we're just going to take a little bit of a look at some of your scoring here. I feel that you should have two staves. If you're going to have three horns, you should have two staves, and you should have the third horn on the lower staff, and you should have uh, the middle parts scored in third horn, and then I think it will just be a lot easier in terms of score reading and so on. Yeah, you would think that scoring everything on the same staff is kind of simpler, and in a way, it's simple enough, right? And but I would just say in terms of finalization of your score, you might want to consider that change. So let's just jump straight into the just a lovely way that this is scored. Um, there is an opening concern in my evaluation criteria about pitch weight being in the upper middle register of the piano score. That is not an issue here. You have a beautiful full scope to your scoring, much broader pitch range than is in the piano score, and I feel that makes it very, very strong. Now, there's another concern here. Like the next one in line is thematic material repeats often, possibly sounding repetitive if orchestrated the same way throughout in these first four bars, right? So, and essentially here you have more or less just kind of copy pasted this section onto this section, and I feel that like there's a very easy way out of it. Like you end the previous passage or this intervening section right in here, right on this big beautiful chord, and I'm wondering if you could just put that back in there on the downbeat, right? Boom, ja ja ja, ba 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 ja ja ja, and then just same thing, boom, ja ja ja, dun 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 dun. I would say everything, tuba, timpani, and all of the strings on this accent as well, right? And um, that I think that would help to that is enough to progress the texture. Just that one little touch, right? So like it already here, this downbeat here makes this feel fresh, right? So just do it again, right? Um, Now let's take a look at how this is scored. I think it's lovely the way that you're using saxophone. Now, if there's anything that I could possibly advise you on here, and that is supply some like cue notes, just basically talking about how the how you can substitute the tenor saxophone part, right? Just in case the orchestra will only allow you a single saxophone, right? So in this case, of course, you have the English horn player playing the tenor saxophone part. So I would say, like what you could do is just put a parentheses over this, say like also tenor saxophone, right? So if somebody is looking at this and sort of saying, okay, what could be, if we have to leave out the tenor saxophone, are we in trouble? And then like they can see, well, that sounding G sharp is in the first in the first bassoon and in the English horn. So it's not as if it's a total disaster if we leave out the tenor saxophone here. And of course, I mean that D is not the same as this E sounding A, right? And the same thing B sounding A, but it's all right. You've got it covered in the English horn part. Here you're asking for oboe and English horn and no second oboe player. Perhaps being mindful of having just triple, having like at the most triple wins. Perhaps I'm thinking like so. It's if you think of triple wins as being a consort of 12 or a section of 12 wind players, then that leaves us with 4, 6, 8, 10, right? So I think you could still have two oboes here, and maybe some of the oboe could cover some of the saxophone parts in if there were not another saxophone. So I'm sorry. I hope I don't sound like I'm harping on about substituting saxophone or covering for the lack of saxophone, and it's just that I had I had an in on the Stuttgart Symphony playing one of my works as a young man, and all I had to do was to put one alto saxophone part onto the English horn and the other alto saxophone part onto a third bassoon, and my piece would have been accepted, right? And I would have, at 29, have had a premiere with, or what it, I guess it was in my mid 30s. I wrote it when I was 29. It was my mid 30s when it was looked at by them. So they just immediately turned it down because of the two alto saxophones, and the two alto saxophones were there because just because they were there, right? They were the original orchestra who commissioned me for the premiere performance of this work. Was like it was like the 60th. It was the 60th or 30th. It was the 30th anniversary of a youth orchestra. And there were 150 people on stage, a lot of whom were professionals who had originally played in that orchestra when they were teenagers, and so they were coming back to bulk things up. And it was amazing, a 150 piece orchestra playing this little symphony that I wrote. So that was terrific. But to come back to the present, just try to supply some alternates for your saxophones. I would say even for your soprano saxophone, like score out the part. Like if you were to say, look, if I had to give this up, who would cover the beautiful soprano saxophone solo? The way that you've scored it, it almost is more of a trumpet solo than a clarinet solo. But just think of alternate passages, put them in cue notes, and then also in certain sections where the tenor saxophone is playing a very loud or obvious part, show the conductor or the copyist which part is doubling that part. Okay. All right. So other than that, this is really nicely scored. What's interesting about this is that you're really taking, like by putting the G sharp on top, you're taking the emphasis off of the melody note. Instead of B B B B da 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 da. Right. It's I can't sing that high, but right. It's like going up to G sharp. So and there really is a lot of emphasis on that G sharp in octaves. Like the first clarinet is going to really ring out, and then of course you triple winds. You've got like I just mentioned before, the first bassoon, the tenor saxophone, and the English horn all hammering away at it. So you really have a huge emphasis on the G sharp. But I mean, it does kind of work. It makes it really, really bright sounding in this. So nicely done for that sort of change of emphasis. Here, though, if you're going to trade off from here to there, I would say put the violas, make the violas double the seconds, right? Just give them, and you could even do this. You could go divisi octaves for the second violins. So you've got have both of these parts on one staff, and then have the violas covering the lower part, right? So that you just really have about like 35, 36 string players on each of these lines, right? Say like you've got 16 first violinists, and say like if you're splitting 14 in half, so you've got an extra 7, right? So that would be put 23 on the top line, and then you have another 7 below plus the say the 12 viola player, so that would be 19. So 23 above, 19 below, right? As opposed to just 16 and 14. I feel that you just need way more weight if you're going to be trading off or dovetailing from just massive, bright wind scoring like this. And then, as before, it's basically just repeated. So I just say repeat this downbeat right in here with all of the instruments, and that'll give it enough freshness. Now, this is so awesome. The timpani, and I think you should say F sostenuto, SOS period, right? And that will just the timpanist will just make it as, just make it as long as possible. And instead of having accents on here, have tenuto marks, right? So it's really just, just really, it's almost like a bell ringing rather than timpani strokes. But leave the accent on the tuba. So that'll give you the spike that you need, right? And then you got a little bit of cymbals here. Okay, so our concern here from this section is melodic development going quite high. The accompaniment figures covering a wide range of pitches. If you were to score them in winds, you don't score them in winds, so that's not a concern. And you basically do a double octave here, violas and cellos. I think that is very, very solid. And then you've got double basses, tuba, and timpani just hammering away at those low notes. I think that works great. So the accompaniment is scored very nicely here. Now, I do have a bit of an issue here. I think that this very last E is just too much weight. I think you should just end with a quarter note here. Bum, 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 bum. Because I think this is a little too stompy. Bum, bum, bum. It's sort of taking away, it's distracting from the upward momentum of these strings right here. Just this beautiful line. It's sort of is lacking. It's taking off. It's flying in the air, and every time it comes around to the downbeat, there's this big thud underneath it, right? So it's the angels are trying to escape from the giants, right? But the giants are still sort of stomping around underneath. So maybe just let them go. Let your angels fly away from the downbeat here with just a quarter note, and then let them fly up the way to here. And then when you smack down on this downbeat again, it really counts for something, right? Now, as to the realization of the melody, here you're basically choosing to just completely, directly, absolutely score it in octaves in your strings, and that's perfectly fine. You just have to accept. Then when you go all the way up here to this high A, high D, C, A, and so on, that you are willing for these top notes to be very exposed and a bit squeaky, right? And the same thing goes here, as you get closer, as you get higher and higher, the A and the B are cool, but then the C is a little squeaky, and then the D is a little squeakier, and then the E is the squeakiest of all, right? So, and by squeaky, I'm not saying that it is that it is necessarily a bad sound. It just has that kind of almost mousy kind of squeak kind of a sound. Whereas, a lot of people are doubling this line in their scores with piccolo, which has a much firmer, chirping sound, right? It takes away from the kind of mousy squeak. Because you have to get to think, if you're going all the way up to D here and then E, how long is the length of string in the violin at that point? It's just a few inches long between the bow and that last finger. So I would just say, watch out. You just have to be able, you have to accept that is going to be the sound. And if that is the sound at the top there, that's probably all the more reason not to just, not to have this stompy note right in here, because it really does distract from what the players are trying to achieve here. all the same, it's really cool to just, end everything with this big, beautiful triple octave. So nice. It's very simple, direct scoring, and it's just making the most out of what is here and scoring it in a really nice way. All right, so that takes us right to here, and I really love the very, very sharp delineation between the end of this phrase and the beginning of the next one. Right, you're going to a completely different section of the orchestra, different color, different everything, and then bum bum bum. One of the problems that you've got here is the chord voicing, right? So you have this C on top, right? And like because it's leading to a basically the whole thing is leading to a voicing of a C seventh chord, right? Uh, but the problem here is that the melody note is an E, right? And here you've got these octave E's in the horn, but like this is basically a functional note that it's functioning as part of the harmony, and you're putting the harmony on top again. It's sort of like what you did here. You had the third, like even though the melody note is a B, you put the third on top. Now here I'm afraid, yeah, I think you're taking too much emphasis off of the mediant of the chord, right? So the sort of the E, the major third, is really what we need to hear on top, as opposed to the C, right? So I think here you can get away with it, but here I feel it takes away from like the focus of the melody, right? So instead of hearing, ba 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 ya da 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 bum, we're hearing da da da, right? Instead of bum bum bum, we're hearing da 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 bum 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 bum. It just feels wrong somehow. It just if there's any way of reorganizing this, I would say try to do that. But I really love this emphasis. Bum 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 bum. I just really love like how you've set this up set up the rhythmic phrasing. 2 3 1, 2 and 3 and 1, 2 and 3 and 1, 2 and 3, and it just really works beautifully. And then, with a little glockenspiel on top, doubling with the euphonium. It is so much fun. Okay, so where you get into problems is right in here. Okay, and the thing that is the problem is that the euphonium has such superior powers of projection compared to the glockenspiel that the glockenspiel is just underpowered. It's really underpowered here, and it's so far away from the euphonium below that the relationship in terms of harmonizing and and then really becoming like treble and bass, it just starts to elude the listener. Now that's true me score reading it and listening to it internally, and it's true from the mock-up. You can really hear that the glockenspiel part just really becomes hard to relate to the euphonium below it in terms of like a real bass treble relationship. It's just so far apart. And also you're getting kind of down into the slightly clunky area of the glockenspiel where the pitches are less well defined, right? Now you're not going below middle C. That's where it really gets clunky. But the idealized place, I would say, are right around G, right? You really the pitches have a certain quality to them. And then you start getting lower and lower, and then you have this other problematic relationship of distance, of harmonic distance, and then with the bassoons as well. So I would just say, if there's any other way, if there's any way to rethink this, try it out. Just see if there's like maybe if you were to double the glockenspiel part with flutes as you go forwards, or if there was something that the strings could do to sort of help make sense between the two voices being so far apart. I think that might help this to work, because I see what you're trying to do here, and it's just a wonderful idea. It's sort of like contrabassoon plus piccolo duets, right? Or tuba plus piccolo duets. I really get that, and I think that's a wonderful idea. But I think that the problem is the euphonium at fortissimo is so much louder than the glockenspiel at fortissimo. Even though the glockenspiel can be a fairly loud instrument, it still just doesn't have the carrying power. Now, if this were euphonium and xylophone, that would be a different story because the xylophone is so powerful. But then there might be another group of problems as well. So, and then there's the other thing is like, like, how much sense does staccato make on a glockenspiel? You know what I mean? Do you really want the player to try to like damp the pitches as they go, or to have a bouncy stroke? How does that make sense? Like if you're going to hit the glockenspiel and it's going to sustain, it's not going to go doink. It's not a doinky instrument, right? So, and you're already going really, really fast, and there really isn't a lot of time to finesse the way the strokes go anyhow, right? So maybe rethink the way that you're scoring staccato here for glockenspiel. And now for section B, which I feel has some of the strongest scoring in this entry, and then then there's something problematic in here, which I think would be very easy for you to fix. So let's start off at the beginning. I feel that this is so cool. This you are reversing things. So a lot of what you do in this score is like reverse the positions of things, and that creates a lot of interest, and it sort of turns the bass of the piano part into this this wonderfully kind of like classical period. Kind of really reminds me of like late Beethoven, early Schumann, early or sort of or Schubert kind of approach to patterning and so on. And it works really lovely. There's one little thing that I just really wish that there was, like, I wish that that melody note of A, bum 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 was just a little bit like if there was some instrument doubling it at the octave, like for instance, if there was some trumpet in here, maybe trumpet's the wrong the wrong instrument. If there were just something like right in here, you've got first like second violins and violas, right? Playing essentially the same exact part. So maybe the second violins plus one, like maybe if you added a second oboe here, could like go A. Because I just I feel that it's that right is really great, but we still need to hear that A in there somewhere. Okay. But this is still, this still works really great. It's nice. The divisi in here, that's cool. Another thing you could possibly do here is, instead of divisi, you could give the lower part to the seconds, right? Then you'd have more force. But I love the idea of the triple octave right in there. I think that's really cool. But like once again, the triple octave begs the question of why there isn't more support for the melody. A. Those A's are they're not just there as harmony notes, right? They really are melody notes, and they need to have a prominent position in there, right? This right? Here's the melody, right? Here's the melody, and here's the melody, right? So we need to hear that A a little bit more prominently, an octave higher, I think, along with where you've scored it in the cellos and trombones and tenor saxophone. Okay. Yeah, yeah, dun dun dun. Yeah, and just like you're putting so much weight on the bum 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 bum. Right, that same line there. So I don't think you need violins and violas on there. I think that it's got quite enough weight already. Right, and then here, like you're doubling the same thing at an octave higher. So yeah, just you really need that melody to be also doubled at an octave. Now, bum 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 bum. That's all very, very cool. I like the little bursts from the horns. Very nice, kind of barking arf arf with a first trumpet, and then dun 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 dun. That's really really nice. The way that all the rest of this is done. Yeah, and it works really, really nicely. So here's something that you might not have thought of, Miranda, and that is that this line, it does not end on a B, and it does not just end. It ends on the triplet, right? So if you listen to the piano part, you can hear the clarity and the follow through of the line goes right. So I think you should try to finish this on the triplet, even if you're just doubling what's going on with the oboe and the English horn, and it almost carries through. But the problem is that it's just too different, right? Forte, diminuendo to piano, it just doesn't have that same follow through, right? Now this is sort of leading us to the next problem, okay? And so here's the problem: these double basses. Right? So the double basses are kind of starting off by doubling the your middle strings, your cellos and violas at the octave, and then they just hang around and hang around and hang around and hang around. So what you're doing here with these double basses is you're robbing the vitality of the bass, that the bass line that is going on here. Like, I mean, if you listen to the piano score, it's very exciting. You have this sort of leaping left hand, and that's one of my evaluation criteria. It's like widely reaching left hand patterns. How do you realize those? And you can easily do them on bassoons, and you can do them pizzicato on double basses too. But like the thing about this is, if you have this sort of drone in the bass, like it is filling in the slot of the sort of the leaping these leaping basses right in here. It's just we're kind of losing the sense of dance in here, right? I mean, I love the fact that you have stacked this up in octaves with the clarinets and the bassoons. I think that that's really powerful, and I love that, like, you're just sort of trading off to trombone and euphonium and so on. But I think that ultimately, this really just feels like it's bogging things down. It's just really like pulling at the momentum so that it just doesn't feel like a dance as much, right? These parts are just these what used to be the thrilling left hand bass is just kind of like an ornament now. The other thing you have to watch out for too, and that is, do you really want your triplets to go da 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 ta 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 ta, right? Or do you want it to be slurred, dum 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 dum, right? So yeah, so just put the slurs back in. Right, and then da 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 da. Yeah. See, and here's the other problem with this drone bass. It is distracting from the function of the melody. Now, one of my other criteria for this particular part right in here is keeping the triplets from overwhelming the melodic line, right? So you've got the triplets actually fairly high; they're above the melody rather than below it. And not only do you have the melodic line still in the same position, but you're doubling it at the octave below, and actually tripling it here, right? So once again, the heaviness of the bass in here is turning everything into an ornament, right? And including the melody. It's hard to tell. Like, is this a melody or is it a bass line, right? Because the bass line is sort of imitating it from below, and it's sort of dragging its function, right? It's blurring what its function is. I think if you were to go over this mock-up and just delete the basses and then listen to it, I think you would hear your score come alive, right? Or even better, maybe have the double basses double the bassoons in pizzicato, right? Maybe throw in some timpani emphasis right on these low E's, da 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 boom, da 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 boom. Because I also feel we're losing the kind of anticipation of these low E eighth notes and Gs. And then just overall, like one of the things I think that is really cool that you do here is my last criterion for this page, for this screen, is keeping textural contours fresh and not too much the same. And I feel that you accomplish that with, by having the flutes take over the triplets from the oboe family. So that's very, very cool. But is there something else that you could have done in here to freshen up the contours, to freshen up the texture a little bit? As opposed to having kind of the same approach every time. When you go bum 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 bum, it's always glockenspiel and middle strings and the your lower brass going bum bum bum. Right? So is there any alternate way that like you can progress the texture so that by the time you get to here it's just quite different? So it really sets up the next section really powerfully. So so that would be my kind of my instincts, like how would I advise you as your orchestration coach, right? If you were getting this ready for a performance. And the thing about it is, Miranda, even though you'll hear me make suggestions and offer alternate solutions to things and so on and so forth, it is in no way me trying to inject myself into your score. It is trying to take what you've got here and make it more powerful and more workable, right? So please keep that in mind. I'm not saying that anything you're doing here is bad. In fact, I think that like all of these longa level scores are really powerful and they really say something. And I wish that all of them could be performed, right? I wish that I could pull an orchestra out of my back pocket and say, okay, all of the longa scores are going to get readings or they're going to get performances, because I think they're all so powerful and unique and I mean, just in terms of uniqueness, this is just such a powerful score. It just is so different from all the other scores. And, most of the scores are more or less different from each other, but this one really, like, pulls away. It is unique in a batch of uniqueness already, okay? So let's take a look at C, in which I left a little clue in the piano part, which was the pedal mark. In the template. So what did that pedal mark mean? If you think about what happens when a pianist like just puts their foot on the pedal and holds down throughout the entire passage, that means that the notes as they rise will sustain throughout the bar, right? So I'm just wondering, is there any way to rewrite this so that the notes as they're played are sustained by other instruments, right? So could this note here be played by tuba and then sustain longer, right? So sounding D right here. And same thing here, like could this G be played, could be doubled by the by one of the horns and then just continue to play. And instead of staccato on the way up, could this be like a nice smooth legato, right? So that we really feel it. And, and then like, what does Falla say in his score? He says he wants a crescendo here rather than a diminuendo, right? So what if you crescendo into it and then pull back to a mezzo forte, right? So crescendo up to a big sforzando forte, and then you can pull back. And then, you don't even have to worry about this. Just start at forte. Ba, ba, ba. So right here, Falla has this big kind of instructions, very, very long instructions to the pianist, bien chantant, and so on. He just basically wants the melody to have this beautiful singing quality, right? And you say espressivo, but that's not enough, right? You have to make the melody feel lived in. This is declamatory music, right? It is singing. So I mean, if you've ever heard some Mediterranean music or Middle Eastern music where people are ululating, right? They're like, yeah, they're really, like instead of like the natural vibrato, they might be going, sort of sounding like Tarzan, right? You're missing some slurs right in here. They're not in the piano part, but that doesn't mean that they wouldn't be needed by a woodwind player. And then, like right in here, for instance, there was a slur that was under the rather than over, and here it's been completely omitted, right? So you just really have to think like a woodwind player when you're scoring this kind of stuff. And that includes, like, for instance, perhaps adding some portato, right? So here you have a row of tenuto marks, and if your woodwind player were to play them, they would be, da 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 da, right? But if you were to put a slur over them, just by typing S in Sibelius, you get this beautiful pulsing kind of sound. Dum. And then you could do the same thing here. Dum. And you could even do it here. And then put the slur back in. Dum. Okay. But still that's that, and even that is not enough. Where are the nuances, right? You're saying forte espressivo, but you have to show us what espressivo means. Crescendo and diminuendo, and then crescendo, diminuendo, and then crescendo again, the diminuendo, crescendo, then diminuendo, I would wait till there for the diminuendo, right? So just give the player lots of nuances. Maybe not a huge amount, but just really guide them through the expressiveness of the melody. Don't just leave the word espressivo there and expect them to get it the way that you want it, because they won't. They'll do their own interpretation. All right, so here we've got a problem. Okay. Da 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 da. I mean, there's a bunch of different things here. Do you want these slurred? Do you want them really? Do you really want every single note enunciated? In which case, you don't really have a beautiful, smooth background. It's just very boop boop beep beep boop beep 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 boop beep 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 kind of sounding. Then, what's a better way to trade off, right? So it's really going to feel like second player, first player, second player, first player, second player, first player. So you're not giving them any notes to dovetail on. Then, how much is good to play, like, in terms of this dovetailing? Like, could you go da, 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 da? So you're giving the same three notes to the first player over and over again. And then have the second player go da, da, sorry. Da, 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 da. So I would say, like, trade off like that. I would say first start off with your first player. So have the first player play BCC, 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 and slur them, and then have your second players play CCB, 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 and just go with that pattern. And then I think you have a beautiful. It's really easy to play, and the players are just trading off effortlessly back and forth. And then you could probably do about the same thing with the bassoons. I think it wouldn't be any bother at all, right? Rather than just first player, second player, first player, second player. Just really, you can really hear the demarcation between the different players changing, right? Changing off, right? Is the difference between trading off and changing off and dovetailing, right? So dovetailing, I think, makes it sound like an endless clarinet, right? And then when you get into this this part right in here, I think you should go to A2 or just like, or maybe have like the first or second, like almost soli, right? So that you just really get that energy, like, because it's really bottled up energy. Like the way that it's played in the piano part, it's this nervous energy that's just kind of bubbling under the surface, and then it just sort of comes out. Something very wise that Alicia de la Rocha just captures in her playing. Just this fire is right below the surface. It wants to come out. It just wants to scorch the listener, but then she pulls it back, right? Maybe it's just an aesthetic thing, but I'm just wondering if, like, this bum bum could have been a lift with the whole orchestra. Could have there been more strings in here, just setting up the next part? Just a little bit more to kind of help out the phrase here. And then you don't have to have the soprano saxophone so obviously leading to it, right? So right here, it's just sort of like, hey, watch, I'm going to go up to another place, right? So maybe the orchestra could pull us up to that next place, and then the soprano saxophone could take over again. As to the other elements of the accompaniment, it's all fine, just so long as you just sort of keep them bubbling under the surface there a bit. So right in here, what I would try to do, like there's absolutely nothing wrong. Like I hate to say the word wrong or right. What does wrong or right really mean in a creative exercise like this? But is there some way of contrasting what's going on? Could the accompaniment, like we've heard this strategy with your accompaniment. Is there some other strategy, right? We've heard the soprano saxophone play already for 8 bars. Is there another instrument that could be soloing instead? Right? You like to reverse things. What if instead of going up, you went down and you had the English horn playing, right? Or with a tenor saxophone? Or what if the tenor saxophone started an octave lower and the soprano saxophone went up and took over here? And we had that contrast of timbres, right? Is there any way that you could do this without kind of repeating the same strategy again? But, once again, I think portato is just so much better than just going, ta 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 ta, So yeah, but this is really nicely done. I like the da 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 ba 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 ba, and of course you're following the suggestions in the template. So how can I argue with my own suggestions, right? I think that was done pretty well. The only thing I sort of missed right in here, could have there been, like, once again, some kind of surge or burst from the orchestra to accompany this, because what is going on in the accompaniment in the piano part, right? There's much more active. You're sort of realizing those pitches in the glockenspiel, but there is so much more opportunity, I think, to realize what's going on in the left hand in a very orchestral way, accompanying and taking the soloist down to this final position here, right? Which, just has no downbeat from the rest of the orchestra. So I just feel like the potential, with your very beautiful, colorful, imaginative approach, I'm just wondering if your imagination could go even further, right? And come up with more solutions, more different colors, more more passion injected into something, rather than just letting the glockenspiel player cover a few of the notes of the left hand. Could this have just been a bigger surge and a bigger, just a fuller kind of impetus for the melody to really push us into this place of drama, right? Just intense drama. Now, right in here, though, I really love the reversal with that bass part on top in the flute. It's so fun. And then bum 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 dum boop boop beep beep boop 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 trill. So funny. It's so cool. And dun 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 dun. It's really, using the soprano sax like a trumpet. And, that may not be authentic to the composer's style, but I don't think it's too way out, right? And I think that it's, I mean, let's face it, Ravel used a soprano saxophone in a very trumpet-like way in Bolero, right? So it's the saxophone can be a very Spanish-sounding instrument, or can be used in ways that imitate or emulate or work alongside in parallel with more traditional choices for Spanish-sounding orchestration. And this is just so charming, the way that you put just all of this up here with these instruments. It's just wonderful, wonderful scoring. Just such an original take on this, with the horns doing the descending chords and the upper winds tweedling above. Wonderful idea, just so original right in there. Okay, now once again we've got agitato. This is just so difficult, for the players to be playing these broken octaves. I think that it's just too hard. You have to come up with a different way of doing this. Whether it is the players just like playing measured tremolo, like that. Most people are taking that tack, rather than. And I think I wrote this in my. There were a few real key points in my. In the announcement. I'm wondering if you missed my warnings about certain problems, like the pitfalls, right? About the difficulty of orchestral instruments in playing broken octaves and so on, and rotating patterns, the way that they were scored in the piano part. So, I just think, I'm not going to take this apart and say what you could do or what you couldn't do. I'm just telling you right now, this is very, very difficult. Even though you've sort of broken it up between players, even breaking it up, that's actually more difficult. Right, just imagine one person has to go, or one half of the violins has to go da 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 da, right, and they have to smoothly, trade off with the other players. So I just think it's, if your agitato was a lot slower, right? If you're going da 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 da, it would be possible, but it would still be very clumsy and very, it just really kind of chop work, just sort of chopping away at the strings. So, having said that, look, there are solo violinists who could play this, but it's really it is sort of like concerto difficulty, right? So some violin concerto players can play stuff like this standing on their head, but it really isn't section string scoring. So rethink this, all right? You are an imaginative, brilliant orchestrator. You can figure out a way to express this in a differently, and make it even more exciting. And look, I hope you do, right? Here I am saying, you can fix this and you can do that and blah, 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 as if I expect you to go ahead and fix this on your own and then go find an orchestra to perform it. Well, would that be so wrong, right? Would that be a wrong thing to do? I don't think so at all. I think, all of these longest scores should be performed, be read, at least, right? But just fix some of these things like this. And then, you're kind of going on with this, you have to fix how that works. Okay, and this is cool. You've got this kind of floating, hallucinatory kind of a thing going on here. But I actually say in my evaluation criteria, maintaining the rather hallucinatory feeling of the music despite fairly straightforward building blocks, right? So yeah, I think that you have got that down here. The tenor saxophone and bassoons, and then the horns and so on, and trombone and euphonium. Yeah, that's really nice. And then of course the rhythmic counterpoint going on there, and the basses and the tuba and so on. Very, very neat. Da 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 da. Bum 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 bum. And then yeah, you have to fix this. Da 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 da. Okay, so all right, so okay, my problem with this is that you have this thick, earthy, gutsy scoring right in here with your lower winds, your low brass, and your horns, right? And then you get to here and you trade it off with these big, beautiful, full strings. By the way, this is totally not balanced. Maybe fortissimo in your cymbals and your tuba is balanced against fortissimo upper winds. But if you want these upper winds to balance with the strings have to be fortissimo too, right? You can't do this. You have to have your winds and your strings have to be the same volume. It's usually when people are really finessing things, they might score the winds softer than the strings. But I don't think that's really necessary in this kind of scoring. Okay, but that's not the problem. The problem is this. That we have this big, beautiful, earthy kind of a sound, and then we're just suddenly trading off to this just very, very bright, bouncy, intense winds and string scoring, and like we got no more. It's like you pulled the rug out from under us, right? We got no more of this. We don't have any more of this chord, like the wonderful harmonies that we had in here. They're just all in the lower winds now. We just don't like. I just feel like there's a big blank spot here. There's a big hole in your scoring here. I feel you just need to keep going. Horns, bring in your trumpets, right? Just really go for it and just make this a big full tutti all the way to the end, right? Because I just feel like on its own, the power and intensity that is being developed here. You are going up to, like, by the time you get up to here, you are going up to about an 8 on a scale of 1 to 10. And now here you're dropping back to a 4 and you get up to 7. Do you see what I mean? It's just like I just feel like you pull out the rug from under and you barely get back to where you were. And then, there's like almost no support going forwards from anything but the winds here, right? Da 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 da. All right, so it's just a very, very, you're using a very, very light hand here in a way that it's not light-handed. I feel it's not light-handed in a strong way. I feel it's light-handed in a slightly underpowered way, right? So I think you should just go ahead and fill it in. Just be bold, be gutsy. Just really, just make it powerful here, right? And then just have everybody punch here. Boom. Now this is nice. If you're going to trade off between, like, go divisi between groups right in here, do the same thing that I suggested with the clarinets. Go yada-dun. Have one group going yada-dun, 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 and have the other group going da-da-dun, da-da-dun, da-da-dun. And then having them overlap every 2/16 notes. That's the way to do this. And then here, you just, once again, this is just really like accented staccato, and I just feel that this is just it's just really insane. There's ways of doing this. Like you could do that same approach of like having one instrument play 3 notes and then the other one play the next 3 and so on and so forth. It gets a bit fiddly, and it sort of takes away from the wonderful crest of this. I'm just wondering, is there some other way of doing this rather than the parallel sixths and so on? Just because it's just really hard on the player, and it's not idiomatic, and it's just not natural to the instruments, and it's just very, very difficult the way that this is scored. Some other way of doing this, like everything just, you've got such a great imagination, Miranda. I mean, I'm just wondering if there's some other way of tackling this that doesn't put such a burden on the player. And then, once again, divide it the other way. Right. And then, could there be a way here? Pianists kind of start their rallentando here, and then they have even more so, right? So could there be a way of having this end in a way that starts to smooth out and then leads just naturally to this beautiful tenor saxophone solo. Now, once again, I'm going to remind you, like, what other instrument could play this beautiful solo? I would say put in parentheses or put in little Q notes, at least like a bassoon solo here, right? Just like the same thing, written down a major ninth. Da, 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 da. And same exact comments as before, right? Now here you got the portato written right into the part. And more slurs, right? More, right in here. So put in your nuances, as you're saying with expression, but you write in the expression. What does that mean? Da 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 da. So here I would get rid of this. This should be part of the background, not the foreground. With your melody, it would be better to terrace this, right? To have just, get rid of this crescendo, diminuendo, and then slightly softer. All right, so if this is mezzo forte, then mezzo piano, crescendo, diminuendo, and then piano here. And da 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 da, and then da 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 ba 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 da da dum. And just lovely little glockenspiel right in there. Okay, so I want you to think about this. One of the problems with realizing the left-hand part in the piano score directly onto the strings, is that you end up with one note that just hangs on, right, and trades off between the two voices. Da 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 da, right, and then da 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 da. So and then when you add them up, you hope that it adds up to da 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 da. But the problem is that we start to hear the seams, right? These are like it's almost like the Scotch tape. If you've ever seen an art project by a kid and you can see the Scotch tape more than you can see the colors of the things underneath it, right? Now, I'm not saying you're a kid or anything, that this is childish at all. It's very serious, and I take it very seriously. But I'm just afraid that this is showing the seams a lot, right? So is there some way of having a rotating pattern in there? Maybe having this as an element, leave it as it is, but is there some woodwind instrument where you can do that sort of interweaving kind of trading off that I kind of, having, one player go you the other player just dovetailing in maybe clarinet or some other instrument. Is there some way of having the rotating pattern right on top of this so that we don't hear the da 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 da, that just perpetual kind of back and forth kind of a sound. But I mean, otherwise, it's just a beautiful idea to have this very lonely, a sweet moment right here at the end. The tenor saxophone is such a great choice, just is such a, it is like the beautiful tenor voice of the wind section, besides the bassoon. I'd say the tenor saxophone has a potential to be even more expressive and subtle, right? Because there are parts of its tenor register that it can really finesse. I would feel better, or I don't know, better is the wrong term. It can finesse in different ways that are more similar to a tenor vocalist, right? Where the bassoon gets a little pale and may have problems controlling its intonation. I think that's right where the tenor saxophone starts to get really, really strong and really clear and natural sounding. So it's a beautiful instrument and a beautiful way of bringing this in and bringing the music to a wonderful close. But just like, is there a way that we can, make this a little bit more, feel the rotation more than the places where the seams are showing in terms of the rhythm? All right, and this is lovely. I like the chisura in here. Okay, so um, triple P. That's very cool. Maybe you could add to this like um, like non-vibrato, right? So it's just really biam 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 pom biam 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 bum, rather than biam 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 biam. Right? Just like just take away that, just make it really icy cold. Here you're saying half the players. I would say have all the players, but just say non-vibrato, right? And then you just get that really cold sound, da, as opposed to da, da. Yeah, but really nice. And then here, dun da 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 dum. You're taking us from ice to intimacy, right? Boo boo, dun da da dum. So I think you have a slightly wrong note here. Yeah, so don't come back to a written A sharp here, sounding G sharp, right? Because like you've already kind of your euphonium is already playing an octave higher than the actual notes, right? So this is sounding down G sharp below middle C, but it should be two G sharps below middle C, right? In the as it is in the piano score. So you're already kind of elevated. So like by bringing this back to here, it messes with the line. And there's also the problem here that it's bum bum. The original line goes yada da dum, right, coming right off of this, right? So you're trading off to the trumpet, and so this obscures that, and then like right, it's just yeah, it's just the way the elements are kind of skewed around. It just kind of makes the connection from here to here very unclear, right? And you're bringing this in as a separate, like I don't feel a connection with this low, this beautiful boy. And the other problem here is that there is a low held A, right? And this time now the A is above the trombone, right? So so we don't have that sense of the A rooting beneath the music, right? I mean, it's wonderful. This is a beautiful register for the euphonium, but I'm just afraid that it's like the sense of continuity is getting a little messed up by the switching around the placement of the parts. So you may want to rethink this a little bit, or just leave it the way that it is. I mean, it has its own cool independent sound, but maybe don't come back to a G sharp again in the bass, because we're leading to E F E F E F, right? And it's kind of neat the way that you're like you've got bum 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 bum, and then you're dun 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 dun. Yeah, very neat. Dun 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 dum dun dun dum. This B would feel a lot more independent if it didn't have to compete with the B that's already like. What if another instrument played this B, like a bassoon, and then you had just this clear line, da da dum, and that should be written out as a completely independent second line going da da dum. But I would say like putting the B in the third that's already going to be played by the second coming in later, or actually like it would be better to have this part as the second and this part as like the first on top and the third below. Then I think that just makes more sense, because they'll be working together thematically, which is more of a third player kind of a role. Yeah. And then just one last little comment here. Ba-bum. Couldn't they keep holding? Because like the pianist is going to put their, like in the piano score, the pianist puts their foot down on the sustain pedal and they hold it all the way to here. So that means that any pitches that are played are going to sustain all the way through. So can you just keep holding these notes? Yada. And then you add this other stuff on top. These B's and everything else. I think they'd be perfectly welcome in the scope of everything else that's going on. So just like go down to pianissimo and just continue to hold and And, the saxophones in this register can get very, very, very soft if they want to. I love this, though. Rolled timpani and the glockenspiel and everything else. Look, it's a powerful score, Miranda. Now, I know I've been, once again, as I mentioned quite a while back, that I was going to be like making a lot of suggestions, and say like, is there any way that this can be done a little differently, or, how can we make this even more powerful and so on. But it is like the whole role of this is just me saying like, how can we make this even more powerful? How can we make it so that like, Miranda is going to hand their score to somebody and they're going to take that conductor or manager or whatever is going to take a look at it and say, wow, I'd heard about the challenge, and now I'm looking at the score and I'm saying this just makes perfect sense. What a great score and what a great interpretation, right? So how can we get this score even more ready for that? Like, just so that there are no places in it where, somebody's going to say, oh, well, I can't quite hear what's going on there, or there's no raised hands in the rehearsal saying, I don't think that's the right note there, right? So, yeah. Look, I'm not trying to send everybody out on a Don Quixote type of quest to get their piece performed. That's not my goal, but it's just I'm seeing so many scores that are worth being played now, that we're getting towards the end, that that are practically ready for the stands, or have like this spark of imagination to them that just is almost like leading in a completely different creative direction, right? So, and it's just also just the cumulative effect of seeing hundreds of scores, or 166 scores now, and just really feeling that they just, in a way, all of them deserve to have a reading, or to have more focus on, or some kind of future to them, rather than just this challenge, right? So, to the degree that you have made an effort here, Miranda, and that you keep coming back and showing me these beautiful scores that you're working on, I thank you sincerely. And also, for showing support and making it possible for hundreds, thousands of other people to view the resources and to use them in their own training. Yeah, that just, that amazes me on a daily basis. I am never used to that. I don't just sort of wake up in the morning and say, oh, everybody's supporting me, ha ha ha, I don't have a worry. I take it for granted now. I never take it for granted. The support that everybody's showing me, I just as a daily miracle, right? Because I know as much as anybody how tough it is to survive as a musician. And, you not just helping me, but helping thousands of other people, it just blows me away and amazes and impresses me and makes me feel thankful. So thank you, Miranda. Thank you to all of the Patreon subscribers. Thanks to anybody who has stuck with me this long and is even listening to my repeated thanks on each of these evaluations. I really mean it, and I can't say it enough. So the only thing that I can do is just to keep going through these evaluations, because I am on a roll here at the end, and I'm enjoying myself immensely. See you all very, very soon.